What's up, my friends? It's Rob. Welcome to Masculinity Rising, number 4. And my mission is to, 1, manage this cat while we're hanging out, but 2, to create a world where men can rise to their fullest potential. And I strive to empower men to cultivate the strength, the power, the presence necessary for them to become absolutely uncommon leaders for themselves, for their families, and for the world, and in their professions. My ultimate objective is to create a community of absolutely uncommon men who embody physical vitality, mental resilience, emotional intelligence, and are spiritually deeply, deeply grounded. Through Masculinity Rising, I aim to create a movement that transforms the lives of men, cats, women, and children, and the world and society as a whole. So thanks for joining me here. We're going to let Colin in on this chat, and we're going to launch into effortless effort, how to transform your life through simplicity rather than complexity. Let's let this dude in. So Colin is, I know Colin is Coach Colin, the coach, because he's a coach through and through. And he's really treated his own life as an N=1 experiment. And if you're not familiar with research, that means that the study group is one person. He is his own experiment with everything that he does in his life. He played junior college baseball, qualified for CrossFit regionals as an individual and as a team, and serves as a coach, and has served as a coach in multiple different levels. Thanks for being here. And I'm curious about what your journey has been in your own life. Because what you're doing is an uncommon thing. Uncommon thing. You could be like working in an office, crunching numbers. I could be working at a bank somewhere. What led you to this point that led you to what you're doing now?
Rob, thanks for having me here. For all you guys watching, I'm super stoked to be here and sharing my story of exactly what Rob just asked me about. What brought me here? And so many things come to mind. And as he mentioned, just being a coach and not having held any other type of job is something that I didn't really value until recently. And all this ties into my story. Going back to being a kid, I played any and every sport you could think about. I loved being outside. I hated being inside. And it's one of those things that I just loved doing a bunch of different things and getting my toes, for the lack of better words, like dipping my toes in everything. And as I progressed through my sports, I ended up following more with baseball and basketball, and eventually just following my passion with baseball. Into high school, I started playing only baseball. And when I was going through high school, you do a lot of those ASVAB tests and start to get an idea of what your interests are, and they kind of give you an idea of where your avenues should go as far as your career. And everything that those tests told me to go, I hated. And because I just wanted anything to do with sports. And it was like, do sports management, do this. And I'm like, dude, I got to sit behind a desk. I hate that. So I getting to the end of high school and, hey, where are you going to college? And don't get me wrong, I had a great GPA. Even without really trying and like rebelling with schoolwork, I would still get a 3.7. It's just like, I knew how to get the job done and do all that stuff, but it wasn't really interesting to me. And I share all of this because it provided this feeling of like, oh, I'm going to be a sellout, a nobody, and that I wasn't going these traditional avenues. So as I exited high school, I still enjoyed playing baseball. I began getting burnt out in it, and I started coaching baseball. So alongside trying to play, I was coaching, and that's where I got my first job, and my first introduction into coaching was coaching high school baseball. And that's where everything really kickstarted for me. And I'm like, you know what? I love this. I love being outside. I love interacting with people. And, to give a valid summary of everything from there until now, that just led itself to the next coaching opportunity, one after another. and I spent about 3 years coaching, 4 years coaching high school baseball, and also with middle schoolers as well. And in the meantime, I was still trying to continue playing baseball. Didn't take care of my body very well and started having some injuries that plagued me. So in that process, I got introduced to CrossFit through one of my junior college baseball coaches as a means of our strength and conditioning. So when I redshirted one year, I ended up finding a CrossFit gym to stay in shape for baseball while I was still coaching, and fell in love with it. And next thing you know, I'm transferring to a 4-year university to get my degree in strength and conditioning. And then I'm coaching CrossFit. And that was in about 2012. And during that time, I was so in love with it and CrossFit competitively as a means of moving my body. But at the same time, I loved coaching people. And I started coaching a different demographic of predominantly, mid-30s to 40-year-olds. And it was just a completely different environment from high school kids. And I just realized how much I loved helping them achieve their goals. And I did that all the way up until 2020. And even during that time, I had the opportunity to work in a Division I college weight room and work with all the various sports teams, because that was an opportunity that I thought of trying to pursue, being a college strength and conditioning coach. And in that process, I'm like, this is great, but it's not really where I want to go. So I continued coaching at the gym, and around 2016, I got introduced to the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And it really kickstarted this personal development journey of myself. And I had always been into sports psychology, so on and so forth. But this was a different beast. This was like about my life. And that's when I was about 25, 26. So everything started to set in of like, there's life beyond these like early adult years. And to think about that, where do you ultimately want to end up? And I started having this passion for really creating a life outside of just my fitness. That's where I was so heavily involved for so long, and all I cared about in coaching. And I realized how I overly invested in that. And I wasn't investing in these other areas of my health and development, on the mental and emotional side more than anything else. A couple of years later, my dad passes after being an alcoholic for the majority of my life, about 20 years. And that was like that seminal rite of passage for me into my manhood. Like my dad, the guy that I thought was invincible, like I knew he had his issues, but like he's always there physically. He was always there. And then that safety net was taken away, for lack of better words. And I didn't recognize it as this seminal rite of passage until years later. But that's where I really started to think like, hey, he's the second generation to do the same thing, of die at the age of 60 due to alcoholism and organ failure. This is an opportunity for me to change that trajectory. All this comes together with my coaching. Then my wife gets pregnant and we're expecting our first child. And I realized like, dang, I thought I was set. I was where I was going to work for the rest of my life. I was doing what I loved. But then it started to become more apparent that it really wasn't my true passion. And there was so much more that I wanted to explore and grow into, because I was starting to see how I wanted to encourage my daughter as she grew to chase her dreams, her passions. And like, there's no limit to what she really could do and what she wants to do. You don't need to go this traditional route. And here I was seeking the comfort of that traditional route. And again, realizing this is a moment for me to not go into the status quo of, hey, have that safety net behind you. You can create that yourself, but go after your opportunities and truly be happy and fulfilled in your life. So that's when I decided that I'm going to start my own coaching business and really craft my coaching around helping others do this exact thing. And I didn't know what that was exactly, but now as I've gotten to where I'm at, I realized that I want to help other dads in this position, and especially girl dads, because that was so influential to me. It really changed my perspective on life. Having a daughter, it helped me understand my wife more, so on and so forth. So I realized how much influence there could be for other girl dads out there, and to help them really start making that change and transformation instead of feeling like, oh, I just gotta take the traditional route. It's helping them understand that it's a lot more simpler than you would imagine it to be, and take those ideas that you have and just start taking action on them. So that was a long story, but I covered quite a bit there.
Yeah, I got a lot of questions for you too. One, what drew you so much to girl dads in particular? Like why pick that?
Like I mentioned, just having become one myself, it's like, and the more that I started to connect with other dads out there, and I love dads in general. And that's where it started with me, is like, I became a dad. It's so influential. And as my daughter started to get a little bit older, she's 2.5 now. And as I started to really develop a relationship with her, I really started to see how different is not the exact word, but there's a different relationship between dad and daughter and dad and son. And just looking at the masculine and feminine is like, it truly, like, it softened me up in the best way. And I started seeing how the other girl dads that I was talking to, I connected with them on that level, having had that experience.
And so what do you see as the biggest challenges as a girl dad? But also the ways that you can help dudes who are fathers of little girls in particular.
And I love this question, because there's this realization that I came to with myself, is that I'm a sensitive guy. And I imagine a lot of other guys out there are sensitive. And there's this negative stigma around being a sensitive guy, especially for the men and what I imagine are our generation, having grown up in the 90s and early 2000s, 80s, where it's like, you need to be this strong man and you didn't share your feelings, your emotions. But there's so many men out there who have sensitivity to their environment, and they tend to have more emotions, or they're more in their feels per se. And I started noticing that about myself and how sensitive I really was. And I noticed that in other dads too, and especially dads who have daughters. It gives them permission to be that sensitive person that they are, and really own it, because it's been seen as like, hey, that's a weakness. You're a weak man because you're sensitive. But in all reality, it's your biggest strength. If you learn to tap into that and hone that and own it, that sensitivity is going to be the thing that, once you embody that, is what would take you to the next level. And I see that in a lot of girl dads, is they've already tapped into it a bit, but when they are able to realize it and bring it to the forefront of their mind and be as powerful as they can be with it, unstoppable.
Yeah, our culture's really lost the plot for dudes, for men that are listening to this, and ones who are not. We have gone this route of stoicism and really sacrificing yourself and your body. Sacrifice, I think, is the right word in this situation. Sacrifice means to make separate, really separating ourselves from our bodies, separating ourselves from our emotions, and just being this being who just does things. We accomplish it. We don't talk about what we're experiencing on the inside, even if whatever we're doing is absolutely killing us. And as men, we've become heroes, really capable of putting ourselves on the line, really capable of sacrificing our bodies in sports. Little boys learn it right away, especially football, hockey as well, another big one. But then that travels with us through school, or to the frat party, to being a hero there, which is not really a good thing. And then into our careers, into our profession too. We carry that no pain, no gain hero mentality forward. We don't talk about I have a check engine light on right now. I'm feeling anxious all the time. Or like I have this injury in my elbow and I can't play my sport this entire year, or whatever that it is. And we've shoved down our health intelligence. That's just the knowledge and not knowledge just comes from a book, wisdom, applied knowledge of like how do we take care of ourselves. Because really the samurais, the Spartans were like, hey, this is your greatest and most effective tool and weapon. So you have to take care of this thing because without it, nothing else matters. We've totally lost that. And then two, we have in that process shoved down how we feel. We're like, don't talk about the fact that you are in pain right now. And pain is a check engine light. Pain's not progress. It's a sign that something's out of balance, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. So we're like, hey, don't feel that. Don't talk about it because we're going to just call that weak. You're much harder to manipulate if you have your own thoughts and feelings. And we've lost our emotional intelligence then too as men. In a tribal situation, men had to have health intelligence. You're the most important and impactful weapon and tool that you have. You had to have emotional intelligence too, because you had to communicate with people. Well, I almost knocked my headphones out. Getting too excited and animated here. Yeah. You had to be able to communicate. And if you didn't, you're hiding something from the tribe. You're putting the rest of the tribe at risk if you're not able to communicate like, hey, here's what's going on inside of me. And when you're detached from your emotions, you lose the ability to feel into somebody else's experience. That's empathy. And without empathy, we've got nothing. We can't read people. We can't understand people. And we're effectively separated, disconnected from other people. And what we want in life is more connection. So really, it sounds like girl dads in particular, what you've experienced, what you're bringing forward is like embracing that sensitivity, that empathy, that traditional, which traditional isn't traditional, it's modern traditional. Because in a tribal situation, we'd be all about feeling and deciding like, cool, am I going to push through anyway? Or am I going to honor this? Am I going to listen to my body? It is reconnecting that sensitivity, that emotion, that feeling, taking permission to feel that as a dad. So how do you do that? How do we do that as dudes?
How much time you got? Yeah,
let's
so many
go,
man. Ways that we can go about this, you know, and what you touched on right there is a huge thing, like becoming aware of yourself and not understanding it to the nth degree, but just becoming aware of, okay, I'm experiencing some pain right now. And I use pain in quotation marks, not to push it away, but like, is it mental? Is it emotional? Is it physical pain? Like what's the root of it, right? And because you touched on a great point, connection. And I want to touch on this just for a moment about your last question of why it's so important. What I've noticed is that, you know, it's not something that girl dads are thinking about specifically, but it's like it's almost like they don't want to become too soft from their daughter, right? Like they don't want to inherit too much, but like there's a balance to this masculine and feminine that you can pick up from your daughter. And ultimately the biggest roadblock that you're creating for yourself or challenge that you're standing in your own way is that you're not allowing that. And like I mentioned, it's allowed me to love my wife better and connect with her better. And that's the biggest disservice that girl dads can do to themselves, is to not just embrace that identity. And a lot of them have, but there's like another level that you could take it to really optimize your ability to connect and to be yourself and authentically be you. Because every person has masculine and feminine energy, or however you want to look at it. It's about being able to channel it and use it to your strength. And that's what I was touching on with that sensitivity, is like, and you hit it great with the connection and the ability to do that. Now, back to the question that you asked, because it relates, is like a couple things come to mind, is like specifically how I help men do that is to become connected to themselves more and to increase their awareness of themselves by getting in touch with their vision and creating a vision for themselves. And I see that so much because that's where I was with myself. I thought I had everything set up where I was happy and life was going to be good because it fit that traditional model of security. But I really didn't feel that secure because I'd never tapped into this actual vision of my life and what I wanted. Where you think, and you made a great distinction there of modern traditional, right? Like when we think about this primal, and I know it's a big thing with guys like Liver King and Carnivore MD coming out talking about this primal nature, it seems like this hot topic, but it's always been there. We've lost touch with it, and it's what's ingrained with us at the deepest level. And you know, when we think about being able to overcome this modern tradition of the American dream, go to school, get good grades, follow the rules, start your career, get married, have a kid, life's happy, right? Life's good. And I found out that it wasn't. And that's what I was going down the path of until I really got encouraged to tap into a vision and create that vision instead of just doing what society told me to do, get the 9 to 5. And this is what I noticed with a lot of men when you talk to them, especially, you know, more specifically the girl dads. It's like what they really want is they want security in their future, and they want to be there for their wife and their daughter and their kids, their family. And part of that is being happy and also being free to do that, not just physically free, but mentally and emotionally free to do that. So, you know, what I do personally is I help them craft a vision, and I help them really tap into what it is that they want, not what society's told them what they should do or what their parents' expectations were for them, to help them separate from that and then ultimately create goals that align with that and get them daily actionable things to get them moving at least one step closer.
So really connecting to really what you want in life, what you desire out of life, which requires you to go in and connect to those feelings and hear. And I don't remember who said it, but if you don't have your own dream, if you're not building your own dream, you're sure as shit building someone else's. And like, that's cool because you need those people too. But if you don't want that, if you'd rather be building yours instead of building someone else's and being a cog in the machine, you have to have a vision. You have to have GPS coordinates if you want to get someplace. You have to have a destination in mind. And so you are helping men go in and be like, well, okay, what is this? What is my heart telling me? What is my vision? Where do I want to go? And how do I get there so that I can be not just providing, but fully present with my daughter, and not just physically, but like mentally and emotionally really be here too.
Yeah. A huge thing that I hear over and over again is like, yeah, I'm physically there, but like I'm checked out, you know, like I'm thinking about work, I'm thinking about the future, and I'm thinking about everything but what's right in front of me. And all they want is what's right in front of them. You know, it's such an interesting, I'm not sure if dichotomy is the right word, but it's just such an interesting thing that they're so worried about everything else that what they really want is right in front of them. And that was a huge realization that I personally made and connected with in the last couple months. You know, so I'm also continuing to go through that journey. It's cyclical. You get to your destination or stop along the way closer to your destination, and it's like then you go through the cycle again. So I'm continuing to go through it and learn as well.
Yeah, this stuff is a lifelong process, and I experience it too. I'm like grinding, creating what I think that my family deserves. And then at the same time, like all I really want is more time, more free time with them, more time to connect and like just be totally present. But then you're sitting there with them thinking about the other thing, thinking about the other stuff, the other stuff that you have on your plate, worrying about things that have not even happened, that your mind is time traveling, taking you other places. So I'm curious, what is your process for connecting to that vision?
Yeah. And so to be clear, are you asking the process of like how I guide them to creating that vision? Yeah.
How do we do that, man? How do we do that other than like,
Right.
I want to make 100K a year? Because like I could totally like lay that one out there. I imagine a lot of dudes watching this be like, yeah, that'd be cool, but I imagine that
Yeah,
there's something deeper than that.
exactly. Because you could say that, but is that really what you want? Or is that just what you think that you want? And that's a lot of times that's a very common thing that you'll hear is like, well, I want to make this amount of money. And then you ask, well, why do you want to do that? And they're like, well, I don't know. That's what he did over there and he's happy. Okay. And that's the beauty of a vision is like this, and how I help men craft this is it's personalized. And the first step that I do with them is to have them do a rewind and look at, okay, if we're crafting, like what I do is I help them craft a 10-year vision. So what I first do is have them rewind 10 years and look at where they were in their life. And then when they make that or do that rewind, it gives them perspective as to what really can be accomplished in that amount of time. Because if you were doing, or if you've gotten to where you're at right now from 10 years ago without really setting any goals or thinking about where you wanted to be in 10 years, imagine what you can do when you've actually become more aware of what you want and you have that connection. So I'll do that rewind exercise. And that can go one of two ways. Like recently I had a client that it connected them to a version of them that they lost connection with. And just doing that exercise alone, like radically transformed their life. And then there's some people that they do that exercise and they're like, man, like, yeah, I was really in like the beginning phases where I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And look where I'm at now, you know, and it just gives them that perspective of what they really could be doing. And then the thing that I love doing with them is having them just dream of and write out what a perfect day looks like for them. And just let their imagination go wild, because that's something that I imagine they hadn't done for a while. And I often see that with them. So how I start them with crafting a vision is rewinding, looking at where they were 10 years ago, doing that, and then just dreaming. What's a perfect day look like for you from the moment you open your eyes to the moment that you close your eyes and go to bed?
And then what?
Yeah.
You build towards that?
Because and that's why I do that perfect day exercise, is to get them practice with like daydreaming a bit, you know, and daydreaming's had this negative connotation because once we write the perfect day, it's like, okay, well now you know what your perfect day looks like. What would your whole life look like as a result of that being your perfect day? And it's just like priming their mind. So when I write the vision out or have them write the vision out, it's more of just like, dude, just write it out however it comes out. If it's bullet points, if it's sentences, like just take what's here and get it out of your head just so you can see it. And then I have them read it to themselves so they can have this physical form of it and then like be able to hear it out loud, because a lot of them, they've never shared that with anybody else, including themselves.
Yeah, and the funny thing is when you tell other people what you're working towards, they'll conspire with you, even unconsciously, to make it happen. When you say, oh, hey, I'm building this thing, people will show up, people will help you, and life will present you with obstacles and try to prevent you from getting there. But really, as an exercise in building the skills necessary, building the strength necessary to be capable of receiving that thing that you want.
You're building your network, you know, and it's a common thing. I think Jim Rohn said it, like you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Like you're going to start attracting those people who are going to support you along the way. And when you run into those roadblocks, those challenges, those moments of like, man, should I really be doing this? Like they're the people that are continuing to push you forward by being there, and you're developing your support system.
So once we have that vision, once we know where we want to go, from in here, taking permission, looking back at what we've done in the last 10 years, whether we've created stuff consciously or we've gotten to where we are totally unconsciously. What do we do next?
Yeah.
What's the next step?
And that's for so many that have created goals. It's like they create these goals and they're like so stoked, and then they're like, how do I do that? So it's simply working backwards and developing, and getting this roadmap. You know, we created our destination. Now we need to map out what that route's going to look like. And it's going to change along the way too, because this is all practice. So say we're going from 10 years to 3 years. Like, what's something that you need to accomplish in 3 years that will get you closer to that 10-year goal? And you just work backwards from the 10 to like, okay, what would be like the step before that? And then we just work back from 1 year to within 90 days. And then once we know where we need to be in 90 days, then we start just thinking about, okay, what do I need to be doing now that will get me just one step closer? And this is where the simplicity then, like, I've heard this analogy best from one of my coaches, Jesse Elder, and he uses this analogy of, if you want to start a fire, not like, you know, your typical get an igniter. I'm drawing a blank on the word right now, but like starting an action.
Go get some gasoline
fire, like
and a lighter.
It's like the log is the last thing that you're going to put on. You know, you're going to have underneath the log some smaller pieces of wood. Underneath that, you're going to have some brush. And underneath that, you're going to have some kindling, probably butchering it to some extent. But it's like so many people are trying to light the log on fire. And it's the hardest thing to light on fire. You got to find a thing that is just so easy to light on fire. And that's the biggest hiccup. And getting back to like, hey, what's the first thing that you could be doing right now? And then they're going to be like, well, if I just do that, I'm never going to get there. Well, if you never do that, you are never going to get there. So do that. Just get a spark out and then find the next thing and get the next spark out, you know, and it just keeps building momentum from there, which is why I've called my program the Build Your Momentum program.
It's like a snowball. Yeah. Rolling downhill then. Yeah, and the forest fire doesn't start with one tree. Mm-hmm. It starts with some grass. It starts with some leaves. It starts with little areas. And when you're building a fire, you don't start with trying to light the big log with a lighter. You have to start a smaller fire first. You got to get your kindling going and then build the right structure. Same thing that we have to do in building our vision. We have to build structure into our lives so that you can get that big fire going, so you can get that log ignited as well, or move with it a couple steps to your vision. And I think you said something that I think is important, that even you in the last few months have taken time to like reevaluate things and be like, well, I got this cool life right now. I got these things, but this is not 100% what I wanted. And I think that's something that we don't talk about enough, in that we set these goals, these objectives, these visions, we move towards it, we get there, we're standing on the horizon, and then we're like, I like that area over there. Like, this isn't all that I had thought. And I think that there's a difference between like lusting after, greeding after other things. Like, that guy's making 100K, I want that. And realizing that this just isn't the experience that I wanted. The Beatles said, money can't buy me love. You get there and you're like, cool, I accomplished this thing, but it's not the emotional state, it's not the feeling, it's not the connection that I want to experience. Mm-hmm. And that happens. It's part of navigating life. Like you said, this is a continuous thing, continuously working on this, getting to the next horizon, and then being like, I totally forgot about this thing.
Sorry. Go ahead.
And I was going to go on another tangent, but I'll reel it back in. I'm going to say this last thing. When I was in meditation teacher training, my guru was like, don't manifest. It's like you could be envisioning yourself sitting in a beautiful cabin, a mountainside, but then when you get there, you're going to realize that you forgot wood. You're going to realize that you forgot something, and then you're going to be like,
yeah,
that's what I should have added. But I think that manifesting, which is just hippie speak for making shit happen, is so important. And deciding what is it that I want out of life, or what is it that I want to give life, I think is a better way to look at it. And what are the steps necessary for me to get there? And then, like you said, taking those baby steps, that simplicity. Anything coming up for you as I just riff?
Quite a bit comes up, honestly. Like and they all come together as like what you shared is like, that's a part of goal setting, manifestation. Like it's all these things that people are turned off to because they've had this negative experience with it. But their negative experience is because they've created it, and there's some importance to having this binary yes or no, black or white, did you do it or not? And at the same time, it's just to create something that's measurable. But that measurement is not you. That's why there's some subjectivity to it, is that you may get to the goal that you wanted to accomplish and realize, damn, this is not all I thought it to be. And that's great. It's the best thing because now you know. If you didn't try to accomplish it, you wouldn't know. And then you're still on this skeptical outside looking in and you're still uncertain. Now you're certain this isn't what I wanted. So it creates that clarity for you. And people are so afraid of that because what I've experienced personally is a fear of failure. That's not a fear of failure. You accomplished it. You just noticed that, hey, this is not exactly what I thought it to be. Okay. So what about it do you like? What about it do you not like? Now let's start getting even more clarity, more accuracy. And it's like, it's all part of the journey. But that's where people get so stagnant and they get so stuck and paralyzed, especially for all these people like myself, a perfectionist. It's like, oh, I got to wait for the right time. There's no fucking right time. Okay. I'll tell you that from experience. And I've had that experience of getting somewhere and being like, damn, this is not what I thought it to be. And being like, man, like, I just can't do this shit. No, I just did it, you know, but it's like, it's about taking in the whole experience. And that's where support and guidance from a coach is so valuable, because you're going to deter yourself and turn yourself off from continuing to go when that's when you need to keep going. It's not when you need to, it's when you should keep going. And that is always a choice, man. Like you can choose to be upset about it, or you can choose to learn from it. And I know it seems so like cheesy and positivity this, but it's like, dude, it's just, that's the reality of it, man. It really is. And shit, I got fired up over that one. I had like 5 other things I was going to talk about, but I realized more and more, and it's been in my message, this idea of like perfectionism and like this fear of failure and letting others down. Like it can paralyze people, and it's crippling. And it's all to this point of like, well, what if I don't really enjoy it as much as I think I want to? Well, how are you going to know that? If you're going to be on the outside and continue to be skeptical about it, you're going to stay where you're at. Why not at least get there, see what it's all about, get an idea of what you enjoy, what you maybe not enjoy as much, and then let's start taking our that information and craft the next destination.
I think so much of this is figuring out what makes me happy, like what makes me feel fulfilled. And you know, going back to my teacher, I understand his teaching now, but he was like, we're not going to do these manifestation meditations. We're going to do something that, you know, you and I did at the beginning before we started this. We did an object of happiness, like focus on what in your life, any person, place, or thing that like brings you fulfillment, that puts a smile on your face or your heart. Connect to that now. How can you build more of that versus like I'm going to build 100K, I'm going to build 100 grand in my bank account. And then you get there and you're like, well, I still feel empty because I'm not amplifying fulfillment. I'm not amplifying joy. I'm not amplifying connection. And if that's your objective, cool, dude, let's go for it. Let's get you there. And then when you get there, maybe you look back and you're like, this is great. Or maybe you look back and you're like, yeah, this isn't everything I thought it was going to be. And then you have that moment where Colin can ask you, well, cool, what feeling do you want to get out of this? Like, what's behind that? What's behind that 100K? What did you think it was going to bring you? And let's start building steps towards that from 10 years backwards, chunking it down to 90 days, to 12 weeks, to the next month, to the next day. And you said something a couple of times so far today, that it's taking super simple baby steps. That's so important to living into your vision, which comes from your heart, increases your ability to make connections with your daughter, with your kids, with your wife. But simplicity is key. And you have said that you've helped clients build their action plan. And then they're like, this is all I'm going to do. Like, this is it. This is not a good example, but it's like, I don't have to quit my job. I don't have to do this crazy thing. I don't have to go like hardcore keto and do CrossFit every single day. You mean I don't have to do that? And they're shocked by the simple steps. So I'm curious, and I imagine that people listening are curious too. Like, what's the simplicity approach?
You know, the honest answer to that is it depends on what it is that you're working towards. You know, growing up, I always heard that. Keep it simple, right? Do the small things. And I'm like, that's not good enough. I'm a high performer. I'm an overachiever. I'm going to do what I've learned is the maximum effective dosage. What's the most that I can do? And it always led to me getting burned out and zero consistency. And after a while, I got fed up with it. And once I read the book Atomic Habits, it okay, there's a whole system to this, and there's data behind it. And there was before, but it's just so easily presented in that book. And that transformed my way of viewing things. And, you know, when it comes to like, what does that simplicity look like? Two things stand out. Two words, I should say. Making it easy and making it obvious. Is that the making it easy is the thing that people overlook. And I use two words. They don't mean the same thing, but interchangeably, it's simple and easy. Simple is effective, but simple doesn't mean easy. Is that people love complexity, especially the people I work with, high achievers, you know, perfectionists. Like they're like, it can't be that simple. Yes, it can. Because what you're wanting to accomplish is done by simple action after simple action after simple action. And it all comes down to really one word is consistency. Without consistency, you're not going to have progress. And without progress, you're not going to have results. So what does simplicity look like? To your question is like making it easy and then making it obvious. If you want to start drinking more water, start putting more water in front of you. You know, if you want to start reading more, leave your book out. You know, like make it so stupid obvious that it's impossible to forget. So that's like the first, like if I were to give a approach to it that spans across many different areas of life, make it easy and make it obvious.
Yeah, I know. I think it's BJ Fogg also has the tiny habits model, which you graph this thing that you're going to work on. Like, cool, scale 1 to 10. Where's my motivation level for this thing right now? This thing that I'm going to say I'm going to commit to doing. And then on the other end is what's the ease of doing it? Is it really complicated or is it really easy? And if you can find yourself in the sweet spot, you have at least 5 in both of them, you'll probably be successful. But if you're below 5 on one of them, then the other one, the ease level will need to be really high if your motivation's really low. Or if your motivation's really high, you can do a really complicated thing, but there's a sweet spot to it. And by picking simple things to do and building them stacking one simple thing on top of the other, you get there a heck of a lot more effectively, and you're able to do it more consistently over the long run than if you overhaul everything right now, you try, and then you fail in 2 weeks, which happens every single January. Most people, before February starts, have already given up on their resolutions. And that's a classic example of what we're talking about as trying to avoid the negation here, but of what not to do.
Which is a great place to start oftentimes. At least just know what you don't want or what not to do. And let's just inverse that. And then you have, it's always that next closest step. And I agree. I like to focus on what should I be doing, and knowing what not to do is a great first step too. And that's where some support and guidance can help, is like, okay, well, I only know what not to do. And it's just helpful to have someone brainstorm with you of what can you do?
So I'm curious, what are the most common obstacles that you see guys facing that you work with? Let's start there.
What I'd love to add, one thing that came to mind about what does it look like to keep it simple? Do one thing at a time. You know, the idea of making it easy and making it obvious is like what we were talking about, is like, okay, well, this is so simple, I should be doing all these other things. Do one thing, do it for a month, please. Please, just do it for a month. And that's where I'll often get that, well, that's it? Like, yes. Because you doing that one thing for a month, at the end of it, you'll be like, damn, I'm freaking legit, dude. And you're stoked. And then if you were to try to do, like, after 1 week, like, oh, I did it for 7 days, and let me add this other thing. No. Because then you're going to be by the end of the month, and you're like, I didn't even do that one simple thing. What's wrong with me? So it's playing a long-term game. It's like, choose one thing and do that for 1 month. Because if you do that one thing for 1 month, for sure it's going to be a habit. And if you do one thing each month of the year, you've developed 12 new, consistent, ingrained, long-term habits for yourself. So I wanted to add that piece to it of like, what does it look like to keep it simple? It's like, do one thing.
Yeah, and I don't remember the name of the effect, but when most people begin something, when they start working towards something, whatever it is, they set an objective. They're developing a new habit. They're doing a new thing. That motivation level, that excitement level will last about 10 days. And that 10-day mark is when most people start to struggle because it's not there anymore. It's just like the honeymoon phase in a relationship. That intensity, that emotional intensity isn't there anymore.
Yeah.
And then what? You've already added a second habit on. Well, now what are you going to do? Because you're falling out of the first one because you didn't really ingrain it all the way. So taking 30 days, even 60 days, 90 days, you want to be crazy to like go all in on this simple thing, because the journey is one step at a time. It's not just like, I'm going to do a mega Mario jump and jump straight to the end of my vision here. It's one little step. I'm going to talk Lord of the Rings here, just like Frodo and Sam. They didn't follow the path that they had originally intended. They definitely didn't. They ended up all over the place. And that's how the journey is. You just got to keep putting one foot in front of the other. Something's going to happen. Cool. We're going to go this way instead. I'm going to change how I'm approaching this. I'm going to change this habit. So bringing that around, what are the most common challenges that you work with dudes on with this simple habit process? You know, what is the most impactful habit that you see and the biggest challenge that you see men facing?
I'm going to sit on this question for a moment. So much comes to mind. Yeah. You know, initially the first thing, even when you asked it beforehand, the first thing that comes to mind is, especially with the men, the dads, the girl dads that I work with, they have so many ideas. So many ideas here. And it's driving them crazy. Like, God, I have so many good ideas. I'm not doing anything about them. And where that leads me to is the one habit is to write. Really? Like, yeah, dude, you got so much shit up here. Get it out and see it. Because why that's helpful, especially with the men that I work with, is it's like you can be paralyzed by the amount of thought and idea that you have, but it's also your superpower. So how can we make that your superpower and really, really get you to utilize this thing, just like the sensitivity? Get it out, write it out. And every single time that I've done that with a client, they're like, oh my gosh, that felt so good. And they're like, because they're paralyzed by the fact that they don't think they can do it all. And they're perfectionists and they want to wait for the right time. And they realize, like, damn, this is a lot more possible than I ever thought. Just by writing it out, writing things down.
Yeah, it's, Jordan Peterson says there's no difference between thinking and writing. For me, in my mind, you're making it tangible then. Your mind is a freaking squirrel. It's all over the place. It's going to run and flip from one thing to the next, and you have these ideas, and by the time that you try to think about and identify the idea, it's gone. It's somewhere else. And while you're thinking about it, your mind's going to take you somewhere else. But when you write it down, you pin it down on the paper. Like you're holding it there. So now you can observe this thought that was in your head, this idea, this thing that I want to do. Or you bring it back to sensitivity, this feeling that you have. And taking a moment to write down, like, I felt sad today. Nobody else has to know, but you write it down. Mm-hmm. Well, now it's actionable. Or now you can accept it and be like, oh, yeah, cool. That's how I feel. And that weight's off your shoulders.
Yeah.
So how do we begin this writing habit? How do we begin doing this consistently? How do we make it into something that can transform us rather than just being another task?
Number one, go buy something to write on and a pen. You know, like simplicity, like seriously. And these are the steps to write out. Like, oh, man, I can't journal. Why can't you? Well, you don't have anything to write on, dude. You know, go get a journal, dude, and put stickers on it. Like, make it fucking fun, dude. Like, I love putting stickers on my journal. So get a journal, get a pen that you and I talked about this. Like, get the pen that you like to write with. Like, I buy only one type of pen because I love how it feels in my hand. I love how I write with it, and it makes it fun. And that's the importance of all this. And one of my coaches in a program, you might be familiar with him, but Ben Joy Walker, like he has this mantra of like, fun is the point. And it sticks with me so much because, like, have fun with it. So back to your question of like, how do you make this a practice? Well, step one, get something to write on and a pen to write with, or a pencil if you want to. And then from there, like, it seems too simple, but let it be. Just write out whatever you're thinking. And I understand, like, hey, give me some guidance, like, give me some questions to answer, but like, just start by writing. Like, put your pen on the paper. Start with that. Seriously.
Start making some marks.
There's a funny analogy that, are you familiar with the Medium guy, Tyler Henry, I think his name is? Okay. He's a medium, and I was watching some show with my wife that he was on, and he basically goes to people's houses, and what he does is connects with like these spirits of like people who had passed on from their life, so on and so forth. And what this guy does is he just draws on a paper like this while he's doing it. And you can have your thoughts of whether this is the actual thing that he does or not, but like, it stuck with me of like, it's just a way for him to tap into like this headspace, this meditative space. And I say this in relation to like the idea of just putting your pen on the paper. For some of you men out there, it may be drawing a line and just connecting lines like it is for me sometimes. For other men, it might be they're good artists, so it might be drawing. Like, you don't need to write words. You can write in any way that expresses yourself. But actually not but, and it would be helpful for you to write the words out that are in your head for more specificity. So I'm a big fan of like just write. It seems so vague, but just write.
Everything's coming together. Writing is a key practice for actually understanding what you think. Do you want to know what you believe? Start writing stuff. You want to know what you're feeling? Start writing it down.
Negation, acknowledge. Like, don't edit that shit, because I used to do that. And that's where I imagine a lot of men get paralyzed with writing. They're afraid to see what they're thinking. Just words. All they are. Thoughts are just words. And
yeah, if you want to take some of that responsibility away, put your pen in the other hand.
Yes, I love that. Let it go. That's great. Yeah, it's so simple.
Yeah, so one, that's going to connect you to your sensitivity, your empathy, your emotion. Just by having a daily practice of like, what's going on inside of me right now? What's going on inside me today? Set a timer for 90 seconds, 5 minutes, whatever time you have, and just letting it rip. And if you're like, I'm thinking, put it in the other hand and just go for it. It's going to look ridiculous. Sometimes my left hand draws pictures. It's all good. You're flexing your sensitivity, your emotional intelligence, your empathy muscles. As a girl dad, you need those. You need those because she's emotion embodied. She's nature embodied. And then through that process, you start to understand, what do I feel? What am I experiencing? What do I believe? What do I value? And then you can also look at your vision, like, cool, here's what I'm building. Maybe that is a 100% in alignment with me, but maybe looking at that, and this is me in my previous profession working in corporate fitness, this has zero connection to what I think is valuable as a person. And this is draining my heart. And then it's actionable. And then you can also write down in your journal, like, cool, here's how I'm doing with building my vision right now. And you by doing that, you have to be honest with yourself. Tell the truth, or at least don't lie. It's what Jordan Peterson says. Put it in the journal. And then you're bringing it out into the real world rather than keeping it up here, allowing it to go crazy up there, that crazy squirrel running around. Now it's on the paper, and now you can actually see it. You can see what you're feeling, what you're experiencing. You can take action on it. Rather than hiding.
You know what's coming to mind right now, Rob, is an actual really simple structured practice. And this is more centered around getting present, finding the joy that's already present in your life. This can be a morning and night practice, or it could be one or the other. I'm going to start with what you would do at night, because this is a great starting point if both seems daunting. Write down 3 to 5, typically people say wins, and I like to use that word, but I like to broaden it up, of 3 to 5 moments in your day that brought you joy, brought you a smile, something that you accomplished. So if you feel like, you know, you're not experiencing a lot of joy, you're not present in your life, you're like, oh man, nothing good ever happens, like, start by writing 3 to 5 things down from each day at the end of the day. And that's a great place to start. And you may find challenge with that at first, and that's okay. Write just one down. Like, just start by writing one down. And if you wanted to implement the morning approach to it, this gets you in touch with what the day is going to bring you and how you want to show up throughout your day, and like thinking forwardly just a little bit, is write down 3 to 5 things that you're looking forward to in your day. And if that's hard, write down one thing, you know, like that's a great way that I've implemented with, especially one client recently, to help them get present with their life and start seeing how much is really there that is bringing them joy. This is great, especially if you're a worrier about the future and trying to like constantly think about that. It just gets you centered for your day, and you do it in the morning, and at the end of the day, it brings you some gratitude and some appreciation for your life.
Yeah, going back to what we were talking about with manifestation, setting a vision and then taking action is what what that is, because then you can make shit happen. And through doing a practice like that, then you can actually be like, oh, I can connect to happiness and joy and fulfillment now. And I can move towards this from a fulfilled place rather than a place of desperation, get to that goal, whatever it is, and be like, hey, I don't really like it here. So, yeah, I want to start moving us towards wrapping this thing up, unless you got anything else
I guess
that's coming up.
Think of a million things, but they'll be more tangential than that. What we've covered so far has been great, and I think it's a great time to begin wrapping this up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the only thing that's popping up in my head is really going back to what you said at the very beginning, and it ties into everything that we've talked about so far with having a well-qualified vision that you feel in here, building a plan, building the scaffolding to go there, because the vision work is your feminine feeling work. The building the scaffolding, like we talked about, building a fire, building the structure so that we can actually move towards that. We can get into alignment with the vision. It is our masculine work. Fun is the point. Taking your time to journal on your gratitude, your appreciation. But really, I see this whole overarching thing within your journey, within this whole conversation so far, which is like looking at how I grew up, looking at my parents, looking at the generation. And by taking a moment to breathe, you can look at the stories that you're living into, the stories that your parents taught you, what you've been building, maybe realize that, like, I don't actually like what I'm doing, or I don't like the direction that whatever thing is going. And by taking a breath, by slowing down, by connecting to what you want to amplify in the world, fulfillment, joy, whatever, love, you can then transition. And there's a concept called being a transitional character. And that's the person that bridges gaps between generations, that really actually finally realizes, that sees and does the work necessary to heal the family story, the generational trauma, to break with, you said, the status quo. And it takes uncommon action, which can start with, like, just let me connect to my vision. I was talking with a dude just a couple of weeks ago that, like, he's afraid to do vision work. He's afraid to do it. It's scary. It takes courage to do it. Courage is a heart-centered emotion. So beginning with connecting to your sensitivity, your feelings, becoming aware of that stuff, building that vision, going, being that transitional character. I got the book of knowledge pulled up right in front of me, that has the willingness to change the status quo, to challenge the established norms and traditions, and create the life for yourself, for your kids, that you want for them, versus what we've always done.
You know, a couple of things are coming to mind, if you don't mind me jumping in real quick. Well, you guys just saw me moving like that. Do it. What you just shared, I'm that transitional person, and I've taken on that identity because of my vision. And I'm coming up on a year of being alcohol free, because alcoholism is what has just ravaged my family. And I made that decision to end it. Like, it's not going beyond me. And I was drinking before, and I wasn't necessarily, you know, an everyday drinker. I drink on the weekends, but, like, I saw the tendencies, and it just didn't align with the person that I wanted to be. So I took that initiative of, like, I'm transitioning and stopping this suffering over that. And it connects with that sensitivity. And the reason why I share that and why it connects with that is because my dad was a sensitive person. And I imagine that my grandpa was, my great grandfather was, because of the fact that, like, they used alcoholism to cope with that sensitivity. They didn't know how to express it. They didn't know how to tap into that and really harness it. And it's been transformational. I've learned so much. It'll be April 22nd. That'll be a year that I've been alcohol free. And it's because I'm like, this shit's done. Like, I'm not letting it go past this generation, you know, negation acknowledged in that sense. And it all ties into what I had shared. Mm-hmm. And I see this question here of what is your vision? Ruben's in the chat.
What's your
Yeah,
vision?
tips
What's
for
your tip for
addictions is,
addictions?
the addiction space. I'm not going to say it's a challenging one to tap into, but my personal philosophy is keep it simple. Like start with that simple approach, and it doesn't seem like a lot of change, but if let's just say number of beers that you're drinking in a day, drink one less each day. Like start there, seriously, and it will change over time. That's where I would start with that, and just keep it simple. Like it really is, and seek support and guidance. Have a support system, a community that you're working with. Exactly.
You don't have to do it alone. Don't have to do it alone. We, as men, we had whole tribes. We had whole groups of men. To be a man among men means to earn the respect and the honor of other men, not women. That's what we strive for, and we don't have those groups anymore. So like Colin said, seek out a group, connect with other dudes who are on the path with you. You don't have to do any of this stuff alone.
Sorry, go ahead.
Whether it's addiction or
I was
vision,
going to say,
go for it.
Specifically, if the addiction that you're working with is revolving around alcohol, there's someone that I know personally that works in that coaching space specifically for alcohol recovery. His name is Matt Gardner, Mattgardiner, and he works specifically with those recovering from alcohol and wanting to get sober in that right. So I believe if you type that in on Instagram, you'll find him. I wanted to share that bit if alcohol is the one that you're wanting to work with.
Awesome. And we'll put that in the YouTube notes too for anybody viewing in the future, Ruben, so you can check out the YouTube link when I get that up over the weekend. Final question.
Mm-hmm.
Ready? What's one unusual habit or absurd thing that you love?
I remember this one being in the pre-show notes. I forgot about it until now. One unusual habit. I mean, the first thing that jumps out to me is like taking a cold shower every day. Like, it's becoming a little bit more common, but it's something that when you tell people, they're like, "What? You do that?" And it's one of my favorite things every day now. Outside of that, nothing's jumping out at me at this moment.
Awesome.
Yes.
Take cold showers. Be uncommon. Be the transitional character by taking a cold shower. It translates, man. You can do that hard thing. You can do anything else. And the funny thing is, like you said, a lot of people are starting to do that now. But really, if you looked at the percentage of the population, it's minuscule. So if you're looking at this, if you're watching this and you're like, I've done a cold shower before, or like I've heard about it, but I haven't do one, you can become an absolutely uncommon person just by a habit like that. Journaling, all the other stuff that we talked about here. So wrapping this thing up, where can we find you? Where can we find more information on what you're working on, your Build Your Momentum program?
The best place to find me is here on Instagram at Colin_Meaves, Collins with 2 L's. Find me on Instagram and Rubens0345. I would love to answer a question about what my vision is. So drop me a message, man, and I'd love to share that with you. It's something I love talking about. But find me on Instagram. That's the best place. Yeah, really Instagram. We'll keep it simple with the theme.
Awesome. Keep it there. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being here again. This is an 8-week project that I'm working on, Masculinity Rising. And if you love it, love it, love it, this is value for value. So I need you to contribute value back by liking, sharing, commenting on this. I'm going to post it right now so that I know, like, hey, you're getting something out of this. And that's really it. Because if you're like, hey, this is cool, I want to see more of these, then Colin and I are going to riff again. And after that, we're just going to keep cranking out. I'm going to keep cranking out this show so that you can be absolutely uncommon, like my man Colin here. That's it. Thanks for hanging out. Have a wonderful day.
Peace out.